light of a torch. Realize nothing is forced, nothing is forced. The nursery and all of the trees cross over the dark, and some old parking lot sold my whimpering thoughts, and I'm on the next train. You and me, can't you see what this means? In the light of a torch, realize nothing is forced, nothing is forced, nothing is forced, nothing is forced.
Hi guys, welcome to Nursery, a podcast from Ohio's Creative Voice. My name is Lee Boyle.
Hi, I'm Tiffany.
And today we're walking around Youngstown. It's kind of cold out, we're holding coffee. Tiffany, you are about to become, if you don't mind talking about it, a transplant from Youngstown to, from Ohio to Indiana rather.
Yeah, I'm uprooting.
Yeah, and so a lot of people know you as somebody who specializes in belly dancing among other talents. As an artist, generally, what are your challenges faced in moving from Ohio to Indiana? Not New York to LA, but Ohio to Indiana.
Well, that was my biggest fear when I found out it was Indiana. But I'm going to be right outside of Indianapolis, which is huge population-wise. So that made me feel a little bit better because I feel like there's a lot of networking opportunity. And then I did the Virgo Moon obsessive research of the area. So I've already found some belly dancers to network with. And the area I'm living in is the Arts and Design District of Carmel. So I'm hoping just proximity I'll find people.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, in Youngstown I spent a whole decade finding my people and cultivating this tight-knit group. So that's going to probably be the biggest challenge, is putting myself out there and like creating that again faster, because I don't want to be there for a decade.
Okay, and no, that's cool. And so you, and part of the reason it took you so long, no doubt, is because you were younger when you started. You hit the ground running now, right?
Because I went to Youngstown State. I had a really hard time meeting people, and I don't feel like I have at least that challenge as deeply ingrained as when I was younger. Like I said, it's been a good decade.
Right. No, that's cool. Yeah, that's how everybody is, I'm sure. The idea that you're an artist coming just from dancing is incorrect, though, right? You have other things you do, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a writer. That was actually one of the other things that I was kind of worried about leaving here for. It's because I found a group of writers in Niles that I go, and every month we meet and we read poetry. We just got a volume that we self-published with all of our writing in it. And it was like the first time I found like a writing community, because I've written since I was little. And so that was one of the other things that I kind of panicked inside. But then I went on meetups because the internet's amazing. Yeah. And I found that there's a bunch of writing groups right around my area. So that's another thing that I'm going to have to kind of branch out into and try to meet people that I can not only dance with, but write with as well.
What kind of poetry do you like?
Ooh, good question. And a hard one.
Yeah.
I'm like, books in general, I'm a voracious reader. So like poetry, I usually kind of gear towards the super personal, metaphorical type poetry. But I really like reading all of it. And like Pablo Neruda, of course.
I knew it. I mean, I think I've seen quotes, but like I was...
Oh yeah, I quote him all the time. I'm obsessed.
He's awesome.
And then like you could go towards the other end of the spectrum, like Rumi. I really love. But then all of the...
Oh, sorry, man.
all of the female poets, of course, Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton, Edna Vincent St. Millay. But like I said, I read a lot, so novels, short stories.
That's awesome. Are you familiar with any modern poets? I had a friend recently let me borrow a couple books. One of them was Robert M. Drake, and these are modern people that do that kind of thing where they post Instagram, they post stuff like that, like quotes, but it's them, you know, then they're doing
Yeah,
it.
there's one guy, and his name's escaping me, but he does what he calls like the typewriter series.
Right.
And it's on Instagram. I actually follow him on Instagram. I want to say it's like Poindexter or something along those
Okay.
lines. I might be wrong. And then like, well, they're not like super, she's not super modern in like the Instagram realm, but Naomi Shihab-Nye is currently writing, and I love her stuff. I saw her speak when I was in college, and I'm just absolutely in love with her poetry.
She's good. I did see her too, actually, in Kent State somewhere.
Yeah, she's lovely.
Do you feel a disconnect? I try not to be an old grumpy person, but like, do you feel a disconnect
But
at
you
all
are.
with like? Yeah, I mean, so I'm moderate. This is the way I moderate it. Like, I'll use that same interface of what you described as like the typewriter stuff to like do my own stuff, but I'll in my head be grumpy and say my stuff has substance and these young people don't. You know, that kind of BS. Not true at all, but like, you know, like Robert M. Drake, as an example, is one of those people who does line breaks to things that I consider more things that belong in self-help books that they tell and don't show, and poetry is supposed to show and don't tell. So he kind of uses the word love and heart and kiss a lot.
Okay,
and like,
I can see that being
you know,
a fair criticism.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. And so I think you'd agree if you like Pablo Neruda and stuff. He's a romantic poet, but earns those words.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
like he kind of gets some double mileage out of other things before he drops a love and heart and wild and romance. He can use those words later, like in the
Agreed.
poem, right? And some of these people are right out of the gate, no foreplay, just straight up. They're
Yeah,
just
there's a
like,
couple-
the heart wants what it wants type. And you're like, that's not really a poem. I like what you're saying. I like your message. I don't like how you're saying it, rather. It shouldn't be a line broken self-help book. Like, it's not a poem.
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's that self-help thing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, maybe not even necessarily poets, but coming up with like phrases that when you first read them, you're like, okay, this is supposed to be deep, and then you reread them and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. And that got really popular, and I think it kind of leaked into poetry because they're like, well, let's like do it flowery now.
Not that it's bad. It's just not quite
great
poetry.
either.
Yeah.
It's not punching you in the sternum.
No.
Like, it's just kind of, it's a blip on the digital swamp of things that are just being like cranked out without a lot of thought.
Is it indirect that I would like them to just tell a story that says indirectly the things they are saying live? Does it make you and me, old fogies who are like, no, you don't say what's on your mind, you make it a metaphor? Or like, who's
I'm a
right?
sucker
You know?
for a good metaphor,
Right.
but I really love like narratives or things that they like when you read them on first glance, it just seems like a nonsense story, or like, why would you tell me that? And then there's like a line that like tells you how much it means. I really like that kind of stuff. The stuff that sneaks up on you, I guess, where you're like not 3 lines and you're like, oh, this is a love poem. We're like 3 lines and you're like, oh, this is a good story. 4
Right,
lines
right.
and you're like, all right, digging this. Maybe there's a metaphor thrown in, and then at the end you're like, oh fuck, that was like the best love story I've ever read in my entire life, and it was like, you know, only a couple stanzas.
because they kind of added up and earned it, essentially, right? Okay. And so, how old are you?
I'm 28.
28. So you're like around my age. So like, is there some young emerging generation that's going to completely throw all the stuff you just described to the wind, and we're going to be grumpy about?
I don't think so.
I hope
I
not.
mean, because there's always like mainstream nonsense. So any generation you look at, there's going to be like this bigger, superficial stream of, I guess, creativity, kind of doing its own thing. But you're always going to have the people underneath that are doing like the real work.
It's got to be like 30.
I know, man. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm not wearing listeners, I'm not wearing a coat. I don't know what I'm doing.
I mean, it
With my
was
life.
sunny a second ago, but
Right.
this one's kind of killer.
Yeah, man. It's
And you have an iced
insane.
coffee. I just
I'm holding an iced coffee. I don't know what's wrong with my life.
I feel like you're a true Ohioan.
I guess. Yeah. Canadians do go out. Like, I think I saw somebody Snapchat. They did like they were on a Canadian beach when it was about 60 or 55, and everybody had their shirts off in volleyball and stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
no thanks.
that's crazy. I guess we're close to that here. But here's my car. I'm gonna get my coat out of it. I'm gonna keep recording while we do this. My wife parked it, so I didn't see it. Yeah. So, set this there. Okay, entertain them while I get my coat.
Oh, okay. I'll just be really entertaining.
Yeah. And don't dance because they can't hear that.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, if I brought the correct shoes, they could have. Like Irish step dancers, they're really fun to listen to.
And let me apologize to listeners for the wind that I know is probably just like knocking into the mic. I'm not gonna fix it in post. I'm sorry. Just live through it.
You know what? I think that's what I like about your podcast. Is just that level of blunt honesty.
Great days come and go for me. 2 days, one for me. And I tell you right now, you'll never give your dedication to this kind of fun. X-rays of the newest guns. Can you give me one? I can use it to break down my useless dedication to this kind of fun. Can you tell me the scene? Can you describe the view? Can you kiss me goodbye if I ask? Living in a cocoon, in the fragrance of noon, it's the only thing I can smell. Deafness chases me along to sing its ugly songs. Songs that begin and end in the worst place that you need patience to understand. Flowers bloom their ugly bloom, and your giant head looms in and out of the trees. I can follow until we get this breeze again. Can we romp in the hills? Can we play in the clouds? Can you rip me apart if I ask? With the eroding towers, the universal creatures, they live in a forest that fell. At the wisp of the sky, you'll be wondering why we were saving this moment so long. At the wisp of the sky, you'll be pointing your eyes and asking why this took so long. It's long gone.
How's it going, man? I'm recording her, but it's all good. How you doing, man? How's life?
Good.
Tell the listeners stuff.
Come on down to Greyland Auto Sales. Yeah, life is good, you know.
Dude, listeners, Rocco plays in a band called Modern Life. A song will be playing right now.
Two men go walking down the same old dirty dusty road. Neither one knowing which way that the other will go. Pack your belongings, come and meet your brothers at sea. Take anything you want, brother, you know I won't leave. Well, I hope the sky, wherever you are, rains man. There'll be magic and mysteries, futile future Japan, and bad voodoo on lovers who refuse to even hold hands. We'll climb mountains that overlook Mediterranean seas. Speak with gypsies and mud huts who talk tongues and know everything. Well, I hope the sky in that paradise rains man.
being a listener yourself and coming from the same scene I come from, do you have advice for the listeners, like on the front of like doing what you believe in, and like just any advice on like say art or pursuing your dreams?
I guess there's that idea that a lot of people get caught up in what other people are thinking about them.
Okay.
And that's probably the biggest lesson I learned in the last couple of years, because when I was working retail, pretty much all of the management above me was working against me making time for dance. They didn't think it was important, they thought it was frivolous, and they weren't shy about letting you know that, to the point of actively sabotaging me so I wouldn't have time for dance. And there's a certain time where I hope other people make it an easier decision than I did. But I really struggled with that, because I kind of believed what they were saying. That because I wanted to do this, I guess, frivolous pastime in their eyes, that I was lazy at work.
Yeah.
Like that's like there was only that black and white, and it's not true. I was a very hard worker, but this was more important. And for me, it was just a moment of absolute. I was having a conversation with one of my upper management, and he said the phrase, "I never want to hear about belly dance again." And something just like broke in me, and it was like an audible click in my head, and I'm like, I'm quitting this job.
Right.
And then I did.
Yeah. Well, hey, his thing that he's that's amazing. So that's your advice to people, is just like follow your heart.
Yeah,
in that regard.
definitely. Like, just cut out everyone else. Really sit and, like, if your intuition is telling you really need to do this thing, make it happen. When I made that decision, everything worked out for me. It was
Right.
like the whole universe came down with this beautiful net and was like, hey, just fall into this. We got you.
Right. And it probably ended up being better for the people in your life as well.
Oh, yeah, I was so much happier. Because, like, at that time, like, I was around toxic people, and I was toxic because of it. I was miserable. And I didn't even know how miserable I was until I was, like, past it, which was even worse. Didn't even have the awareness of how bad it was.
Interesting. And my immediate observation is that the thing that the person said to you had to do with belly dancing and not you working harder. So my assumption, though I wasn't there, is that they didn't care so much about you working harder in retail as they cared about breaking you.
Yeah, I think they really just wanted me to have that tunnel vision of, like, this is only important, this job. And
And why did they want that exactly? I'm sure you were a good worker, and they maybe saw that they can improve upon you in their eyes, but wasn't it more about railing against belly dancing than it was about promoting your retail position?
That's kind of how it felt, because, like, no one could complain about my job performance. Like, since I was in management, it was about developing, like, a team, and I really liked that aspect of my job. Sales, not necessarily, but if I can develop other people to have that skill set and it helps them further along in their career, I was passionate about that, and I worked really hard at that. And so for him to act as if I wasn't doing good enough for my job because I was distracted by belly dance, I just think it was like a different set of values. That manager, I mean, I worked there for a long time, so I know that his life does kind of revolve around work. So I don't know if it's just like his priority he thought should be my priority, because he didn't have any hobbies. He wasn't an artist.
Were you on the other side of the spectrum? I believe everything you said, but on the other side of it, were you a lazy kid who didn't show up for shifts and stuff?
Oh, no.
So it wasn't really that you were like, I have a dream, don't get in my way, and like left.
No, not at all. Well, because at that point, like when I first started belly dance, I didn't even know I was going to perform. I just was doing it for mental health. Like,
Yeah.
I always loved to dance, and I went and I just really clicked with the women, and I felt a lot better. And so I kept on doing it. And then when the performance aspect came up, I was kind of coaxed into it a little bit, and I kind of took a leap of faith that I would be able to handle it. And then after the first performance, I don't know, it just like felt like, oh, this is what you've been missing. This is what you want. And that my job was like directly interfering with that was really frustrating. And I really have a lot of like personal views on why that job ended up being so toxic. And I might be biased, but a lot of them I've come to the conclusion like weren't really about me. I just didn't fit very well in that realm. If I'm calling off a shift or requesting off a shift, I guess I should say,
Sure.
for a performance, in their eyes they're like, well, you're a manager and you shouldn't do that.
I
Like,
see.
we should come first all the time.
Okay.
But that's not necessarily how life balance is. And I guess that was like a big thing too. Like there was no work-life balance. Like it was that job all the time.
Okay.
And I don't know, I just felt like I couldn't live that way. It wasn't fulfilling.
That makes sense. And then one last thing before we're done here. What do you look at everything we talked about through the veil of religion? What has all this brought you to spiritually, if anything?
Oh wow, that's a big question.
If you want to answer the question.
Oh no, that's totally fine. Actually, I guess I almost kind of alluded to it. I'm a very spiritual person.
Yes.
And so my creativity is directly linked to that. And I guess like when I make decisions, and I get bogged down obviously by life and petty stuff like paying bills, but when I'm truest to myself, I'm able to pull back and look at the big picture and be like, will me sticking in this retail job that I'm passionate about certain aspects but it's not really fulfilling, do I just want to do that forever because people will look at it and be like, oh, look at what a good job she did? I'm like, or do I want to be fulfilled creatively? Because dance isn't just, to me, like moving the body in really pretty lines. That's part of it. But I think of it as therapy, as prayer, as meditation. It's really important to me. And so I guess like the last couple of years, ever since I found the studio and like left my job and kind of made a lot of life changes, I think it's then brought me back to my center. Because like my center always kind of shifted around, like it was really wishy-washy. And I guess it like kind of brought me back down into like a grounded position where I could look at my manager and be like, no, your view of me is not me, and you're hindering myself.
Yeah.
And leave that situation, because I always had that hard time of like leaving bad situations. I guess because spiritually I kind of was second guessing a lot of things, but I'm not doing that as much anymore.
Well, that's good because I think there's a point where people that you care about can tell you what you're like and you have to accept it, but people like that can't really tell you who you are. So I think it's the right call. And there are certain things that mystify me, such as with art forms that I'm not as familiar with, such as dance, or even something that involves like athletics in another realm like a sport. They like the essence is always fleeting in what that art is. So it's actually nice to hear you explain it as therapeutic for you and possibly maybe therapeutic for other people through you. Who knows? You know, that kind of thing. Like,
yeah, we do talk about that actually at the studio, because all of us came to dance because we liked looking at dance. Like looking at another person, like when they throw their arms open and like their chest and neck is open, it looks like it feels really good. And while you're not doing that in your body, you can feel that feeling and you're like, oh, that does feel really good. Or when you watch like a ballerina just like float effortlessly, it feels really good to watch.
if they mean it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, because when it's coming from like a deep well of something energetic, like you're able to give that energy to other people. And we talk about that a lot in dance, especially when you get kind of bogged down in like the, oh, my technique isn't that great, or I just can't get this thing, and you're like, you know, petty human stuff.
I see.
Then you like kind of like go back and you're like, what's the feeling? You go back to the energy, like what are you trying to give people?
In some form of art, like people will pick it up what you're laying down, right?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And it's actually a lesson I was learning because I always loved looking at watercolors and I love the medium, but I was having such a hard time like doing watercolors. And then like there was a moment when I was in dance and I was talking to one of my artist friends and something just clicked and I'm like, I'm getting frustrated because I want it to be something for someone else. I forgot like why I wanted to do it, and it was like for me.
Sure.
And I'm still not great at it, but it's like one of those things that I think is really important about art that people kind of forget to talk about, that it doesn't always have to be good.
Right.
Like if you're doing it, you're learning something, even if you're not going to, you know, win an award or get a bunch of accolades. Like that's not what it's about. And if that is what it's about, it's not really art, I don't think.
Right. And I think there's a point where you probably can't get very fine-tuned as to whether you're doing it for yourself or someone else, because after you're done with it and you show it to someone else, it is theirs now too. So it's like, don't waste your time overanalyzing who it's for so much as that it's there and someone will pick it up.
Right.
Whether it's you or whoever, right? That's that's what's important. It's like figuring out who the intention was for might be completely like useless.
And I think that's true in a lot of different art forms. Like if you're trying to write like the best, catchiest pop song, so like you get it played in clubs, and that's your only like goal. I don't know if you can really create from that superficiality. Maybe,
Yeah.
but I think that even if you tell other people that's cool, there's something underneath that.
There must be something else. there.
Yeah, that is like, you might want that, but that can't be the only outcome that you see from that creation.
That's smart. And I think there's always maybe your audience is in mind, but just taking a back seat to like what you have to first and foremost be sincere about, which is yourself. Like it's like you don't start, like you said, you can't start just with them in mind. They just take a back seat. I think my theory is that they're there somewhere in most cases in your head while you're doing it, but just way tiny, like real little. Like they can only be there so much, but we'll have to get out of the way for you to be like, well, I don't know anything about my own life, so I have to like, do it.
Right, and I think I really started to understand that with dance, because in a choreography, you do have to think about audience, because it's a visual thing, which I had never, most of my creativity came from like, writing was my really only well to come from, because I was never really a performance artist. So the idea, there is like, okay, audience is here, and how are you orienting and how are you creating this visual piece? Because you know you're going to hand it to somebody.
Right.
It's not like just like it's very different from us just like jamming in the studio for each other. Like that, if no one's ever going to see it, that feeling's totally different. But at the same time, like you said, it's like that real little back in the head thing where you're like, the people that are going to get it will get it. Or maybe the people that maybe won't get it, but they'll take something from it.
Right.
Whether or not it's even as superficial as like, look how pretty that is. And then they move on with their day and they never think about it again.
Because you know that stuff moves through people differently than you could ever imagine and affects them in a new way that maybe you just never thought of, like you say, you know?
Yeah, totally in agreement.
Yeah. But anyways, can you say, look, Mom, we're on a podcast? That's our tagline.
Look, Mom, we're on a podcast.
And thank you so much, Tiffany, for being a guest. It was great.
Oh, thank you.
This is Jimmy Martin from the Speaking of Music show at YouTube. Thanks for listening to the Nursery Podcast.